Hello everyone and welcome to Tuesday. It's been a while since we had a cell phone discussion here on the vlog, so we're going to have a cell phone discussion, or as many of you like to call them, smartphones. But I like to call them dumb phones. The reason this discussion is relevant is that I actually just got a new phone the other day, and you guys saw it in action. Remember the other day on the vlog whenever we were at Snooki's and the video looked like absolute garbage? That was my new phone. Yep. You're probably like, man, that's not very good. Yeah, it's funny because I actually had one that was better than the one I got, and I downgraded. Before I get too far ahead, I want to back up a little bit and tell you about my history with cell phones. Those who have been around a while might recall the Nokia Bricks. They are like probably this tall, but they're like this thick. The blue phones, and they weigh as much as a brick. Really huge, gigantic phones. I had one of those phones for probably, gosh, I don't know, 4 years, 4 or 5 years. I mean, even after the technology was far more advanced than that thing. People were, had the flip phones, people were doing texting, and web browsing was beginning. We had all these fancy games and stuff. My phone, I don't even know if that phone did text messaging. I don't think it did text messaging. It did have a game, it had Snake, and that was it. It was grayscale. I think it had less colors than a Game Boy, but it was cool, and it was really useful. In fact, there was one situation where someone in the U.S. had one of those phones, and he got shot at, and the bullet actually went into the phone. The phone was so thick that it protected him. It was the bodyguard phone. Anyway, my point is, even though that phone sucked and was really, really old and showing its age, I just didn't upgrade. It was a good phone. The battery in there made the phone last for like 1 or 2 weeks. Seriously, on standby it would go 1 or 2 weeks because the battery was huge. I loved that phone. Eventually, the phone died. I mean, really, it just stopped working, and that was probably after about 4 or 5 years. I had a phone, and then my parents shared a phone, and one of them died, and I said, hey, we should probably upgrade these things. I think it's finally time. The next phone I don't really remember all that well. It was more of a transitional period, and it wasn't really that important. But then I got a phone of my own. I decided to get a Sony Ericsson. It was a flip phone, and it did a lot of cool things. But one thing about me is I've never had a data plan. Ever. In fact, back then I didn't even have a text messaging plan, and when people would text me, I wouldn't text back because I didn't want to get charged. I didn't want them to think that that was something I did because I didn't have a text messaging plan. I loved that Sony Ericsson phone to death. Probably because when you connected it to the computer with a USB cable, it actually gave you access to the root of the actual phone. It was awesome. There were so many modifications online that you could find for the phone. You could change all this stuff. You could download all these games and put it on there for free. It was just a really, really awesome phone. I loved that thing. The phone lasted most of high school and into the first year of college. Unfortunately, then the phone just kind of sputtered out. I don't know if you guys have ever had a flip phone die because of this reason, but whenever I would go to open the phone, like the phone would be on and it would be ringing, I'd go to open the phone, and when I would open the phone, it would kill the phone, and the phone would die. And then I would have to turn the phone back on with it open and call the person back. So I decided it was time to get a new phone. I should also mention that before I entered college, I got a text messaging plan. I decided that, it might be worth it. It's $5 extra a month, and it gives me 400 sent and received texts. So I could do 200 sent, 200 received, or 100 sent, 300 received. You guys get the idea. Anyway, when the Ericsson died, I actually went to the phone store. At this time, it was T-Mobile. I used to be with Suncom. In fact, I'm still on a Suncom plan, but we kind of got switched over into T-Mobile after they bought Suncom. Anyway, I went into the store, and I wanted another Sony Ericsson. They had newer models, and I was like, this would be another great experience. I love the Ericsson so much, I would just get another Ericsson. But they sold me on the Samsung Behold. The reason they sold me on the Samsung Behold is because it had a 5-megapixel camera, and at the time I was not yet vlogging, but I was keeping a blog and I was taking a lot of pictures, and the idea of having a phone in my pocket all the time that could take really nice photos was enticing. In fact, that was one of the things that led to me eventually becoming a daily vlogger. It was a hard decision to make, but I decided to go with the Behold. It was also a little strange because it was my first smartphone, but I still didn't have a data plan, and to this day I still don't have a data plan. Anyway, the Behold has been a good phone for me, and I did enjoy it, although the touchscreen sucked, especially considering that I have an iPod Touch, and now I know what touch screen technology is supposed to be like, and the Behold really missed the mark on that. But overall, it was a good phone, and it got me through the rest of college, and I've had it for, I guess, 3 or 4 years now. Anyway, as you might guess, over time, the lithium battery just goes lower and lower and lower, and it got to the point where it just wasn't holding a charge anymore, and I said, you know what, I'm done with this. I need to get a new phone. So this weekend while we were in Myrtle Beach, I decided to go into the T-Mobile store and talk to them. And they had a few options there. I wanted to downgrade because I was quite honestly tired of having a smartphone. I wanted something a little dumber. And I learned a few things. One is that you have to pay an activation fee whenever you're there, even for a new phone. You had to pay all these extra fees, and it was actually going to make a relatively inexpensive phone pretty expensive, and that kind of ticked me off. However, they said that because I am a T-Mobile customer and I have a SIM card, that I can just buy a prepaid T-Mobile phone at Walmart. I don't have to pay an activation fee. I can just put my SIM card in it and it works. That was exciting. As you might imagine, I then made my way over to Walmart to see what they had, and I eventually decided on this. This is the T-Mobile Spark, and this was probably available at some time ago, or at least something similar to it, and it was probably a lot of money. I got it for $50. The fact that if my phone breaks, I can pay $50 and get a new cell phone and be up and running immediately without having to extend a contract or anything, that's pretty exciting for me. Now, this does do data, but at the same time, it's not a giant touch screen, and it's not pushing data. On the Behold, there was a big button that was like web. And I was like, I don't want web. Web is scary. Don't give me, data charges. This is not like that. And one of the things that has been a little difficult to get used to is that this is one of those phones that does this. I don't know what that's called. Flip phone, maybe? No, flip phone is where it flips out. This is a slide phone. Is that what they're called, Mal? Mal says they're called a slide phone. Slider. Like the burgers you eat. Anyway, I know that I sound like a grandpa when I'm talking about all this stuff, but it's absolutely true. I'm not real familiar with phones and phone technology. I know about the iPhone, but that's really only because I have an iPod, and I think that those are cool, but I would never use them. I'm at home, like, all the time. Why would I need data? Which is kind of my reason for not getting a data plan. Anyway, this is a phone that, as I said in the beginning, I would call a dumb phone, because even though it can be used as a smartphone, it's really not a smartphone. It's just a phone that has web browsing. But they have new phones, the iPhone obviously, and then a bunch of the Android phones are smartphones. They do all kinds of crazy stuff. Stuff that I just honestly don't need. So at this point you're saying, Steven, you've really went on for quite a while. What are you actually getting at? Well, I don't know. Actually, this is Steven Vlog. I can talk about whatever the crap I want. I decided to talk about my phone and the fact that I got a new phone and I downgraded. But since I have went on this long, I think I will shut up and open the discussion to you guys. Last time we've talked about cell phones, I talked about something similar. Obviously, I had a different phone. Now I have a slightly crappier phone, which is good. But I want to hear your opinions. Do you guys have smartphones? Do you have dumb phones? Maybe you have really, really terrible, awful phones, which honestly is probably closer to what I would enjoy. Do you have data plans? Do you get your use out of data plans? Because honestly, like I said, I'm at home all the time. It just doesn't do me any good. For someone who would travel a lot, it would probably be perfect. If you're on a data plan, is it unlimited? If you text, how often do you text? I do very, very little texting, and it's actually been very hard to get used to using physical buttons. It hasn't been that bad, but it's been an adjustment period for sure. Now, don't get me wrong, I think that smartphones are cool. I really do, and I think that the continuing technology of them is even better. The fact that Google Wallet exists and is up and coming, and that we'll be able to eventually, maybe hopefully one day, we'll all have smartphones that contain all of our personal information, that we can just scan that and pay for things. I think that's neat. The problem is, I often wonder how far away that is, because before we get to that point, the $50 phone that I buy in Walmart has got to be able to, practically cook me eggs in the morning, and right now, $50 gets me one of these. Anyway, you've made it this long. You made it through story time with Steven, talking about old cell phones, so why don't you take this opportunity to talk about your cell phone, your plan, etc. Hey, maybe you're one of those people that don't have a cell phone. I mean, it's very rare, but it happens, and sometimes people say that they live much better lives because of it, so tell about that too. Oh, and as one final thing that I'd love for everyone to answer, what age is old enough to own a cell phone? I just like to throw that out there, because sometimes I see 6-year-olds with cell phones, and I just want to get your opinion on that. Okay, I promise I'm done. Long vlog. Tomorrow's will be shorter, maybe. I have no idea. So thank you guys for watching, and let's meet back tomorrow, shall we?